Greetings to everyone and welcome to today's internal awareness session. This presentation aims to explain Al-Masood Energy's and ADNOC's behavior-based safety (BBS) safety level 2 training program and highlight its importance to Al-Masood employees. The contents of the presentation will include the following: awareness objectives and deliverables. Introduction: what is culture and what is behavior? What drives behavior? Heuristics, mental shortcuts, habits. Factors and biases influencing the unconscious. The BBS program is intended to build and enhance employees' skills and ability to recognize and respond to unsafe behaviors by promoting open, constructive dialogue and shared responsibility. It aims to build a positive safety culture by encouraging proactive observation, respectful engagement, and continuous improvement in day-to-day site activities. The deliverables of this awareness session is to ensure that Al-Masood Energy employees understand what behavior-based safety (BBS) is and why it matters in the workspace. Follow key BBS principles and how they apply to daily tasks. Steps for conducting BBS observations and providing effective feedback. Defined roles and responsibilities for employees and supervisors in the BBS process. Practical tips to encourage employee involvement and build a positive safety culture. Behavioral-based safety, or BBS, is a critical element in ADNOC's culture transformation strategy that has been developed to ensure achievement of 100% HSE across the companies. All employees' support is critical and important to the successful implementation of the BBS program, fostering a safe community for all. What is behavior and what is culture? There is a direct relationship between HSE culture, our behaviors, and leadership. Well-structured processes, supported by leadership, are critical element, helping to shape the behaviors that ultimately influence our culture. This program builds on the ADNOC HSE culture transformation journey, which started back in 2018. An extensive HSE culture assessment was conducted across ADNOC Group companies. When speaking of an organization's HSE culture, very often we refer to the Hudson model. The stages of culture illustrated in this model are: pathological, least desirable, who cares as long as we aren't caught; reactive, safety is important, we do a lot every time we have an accident; calculative, we have systems in place to manage all hazards; proactive, we work on the problems that we still find; generative, most desirable, HSE is how we do business around here. A pathological culture is least desired, what we aim for is ideally a proactive or generative culture. Behavior-based safety is one of the vehicles to help us achieve this goal, changing the way we think and how we behave. To move from pathological to reactive to calculative requires a push to move from one stage to the next. In order to move beyond this, there must be a strong pull driven by leadership. Without this, it will not be possible to create the 100% HSE generative culture that we aspire to. BBS is identified as one of the 5 key transformational elements that were identified as being critical to achieve the aspirational vision of 100% HSE. BBS is neither a quick fix nor a silver bullet. BBS is a key on the keyring of safety. It is an important process that addresses the human element of industrial safety in a scientific, logical approach with leading and predictive indicators. To understand behavioral-based safety, we need to have an appreciation of the following: what is behavior? We must have a common understanding. What drives behavior? The things that influence our behavior. How practically can we influence behavior to the next level? In this session today, examples will be provided to highlight this in a practical way. What is behavior? Looking at the picture on the left. What do you observe? What might be causing this person to do this? Now the picture on the right. What do you observe? What might be causing this person to do this? What you are observing are actual behaviors. Behavior is an action or attitude that we can see. Would you agree that a smile is a behavior? What about a frown? How would we get someone to shift from behaviors on the left to those on the right? Will punishment change the behavior? The behavior on the left is a bad habit. How could we correct it? To correct it, we would discuss the matter and explain how dangerous it could be. The fact that the individual could have an accident and injure themselves. Even worse, they could injure or even kill someone else. We would try to get them to realize that it is not safe practice. We would get their commitment to not become distracted by their mobile phone while driving. This is a decision they would make to change their behavior. This is the essence of BBS. Behavior can be an action or a mannerism. It is observable. Each and everything we see people do is behavior. It is the result of decision making, and if we can influence the decisions that people make, we can influence behavior. It is the response to stimuli or inputs. This behavior that you observe comes from your brain. Various stimuli in the environment are perceived, detected, and evaluated, which motivates us to do something. This happens both at a conscious level and an unconscious level. So how do we change behavior? You can control the inputs, the environment that people are in, what they perceive, teach them to evaluate information that will lead to different decisions and different behaviors. If we work with this process, we can enhance behavior and reach our desired state of being exceptional when it comes to HSE behaviors, and that is the process. Examples of new behaviors we had to adopt during the pandemic. Social distancing, masks, not shaking hands. We all agreed consciously that these are things we must do. Everywhere we went saw the stimuli, the signs, and also other people behaving in this way. These were the stimuli or inputs that we evaluated, that motivated our behavior. Providing the stimuli, and walking the talk created the environment that drove the right behaviors. During the pandemic we learned new safer behaviors. Thus, we can learn, stimulate new safer behaviors, the same way we can unlearn, reflect on unsafe behaviors. What is behavior and how does it influence others? We have defined a behavior as being an action or a mannerism in response to various stimuli or input. Can one individual's behavior influence another individual's decision? In this picture, what actions and mannerisms can we identify? For instance, we are on shore and we need to fly offshore. Which pilot would you choose to fly with? What differences do you observe in the behavior of these two pilots? We can see that the different set of behaviors are illustrated. One is confident and smiling and ready to go, the other is careful and serious to check with caution, making the point that we are different. Mike may be more reckless, Jono can be seen to be more safety conscious. Similarly, we see that the behavior of the pilots can affect our choice. What happens when someone in a group yawns? Invariably others in the group will also yawn. What is your response when someone smiles at you? Natural reaction is to smile back. Behavior-based safety is a process to engage the conscious mind in order to influence decision-making at both the conscious and the unconscious level. If done effectively, it results in enhanced and sustained safe behaviors. The process focuses more on the positive influences rather than the negative, wherever possible. At times it is still necessary to have the high courage engagement to address negative behavior. The BBS process contributes towards creating the 100% HSE mindset that reflects our desired HSE culture. The process uses techniques developed from brain-based sciences to deliver behavior-based safety tools that can be implemented at the front line, by the front line.
What is culture? Marcus and Connor explain that culture consists of everyday practices and beliefs that shape our decisions and our actions. The institutions that afford or encourage those everyday practices and beliefs. Pervasive ideas about what is good and right. Now let us look at an example to explain. What behaviors can we identify in this picture? Holding handrail, objects in baskets, low heels, walking not running. What has influenced those behaviors? Rules, procedures. What lead to those rules being put in place? Incident or mistakes. Now let us consider how the COVID pandemic may change the way we use stairs. Do we still hold handrail? Would we wear gloves or disinfect? The virus can attach to the gloves. Is this still a good practice? These thoughts can raise our conscious awareness about what we are doing, in general.
The following example demonstrates the interaction between culture and behavior. What does this picture tell us about the culture of this facility? Is it neat, tidy, good, or bad housekeeping, etc.? Although we do not see any people in this picture. What does it tell us about the behaviors of the people that use this facility? Do they clean up after themselves, keep it neat and tidy, put things back where they belong? What does it tell you about the culture and the behaviors? Did the second picture generate any immediate feeling or emotion when you first saw it? So we see that each of these pictures conveys a message about the culture. How do you think it will affect someone who is joining the team who use these facilities? Is it possible that their own behaviors may change with time to conform to the culture? Are the people living in the top left picture more or less likely to behave safer? This shows that you can tell a lot about culture even when there is no people or behavior to observe. The culture influences the way you behave, and also the behavior also influences the culture. This leaves us to question, is it possible that their own behaviors may change with time to conform to the culture? Let us look at a simulation of how this may appear on an actual work site. In this picture we see that the walkways are kept clear of clutter and there are no objects laying around. Anyone new to this area would immediately know that it is not acceptable to just put an object anywhere. Furthermore, it would be clear that housekeeping is an important part of the culture at this site, and the individual would be careful to maintain good housekeeping. In this picture we see what appears to be a very poorly controlled storage area. There is no demarcation. All types of items have been deposited here. Anyone new to this area could easily think this is a dumping area. Housekeeping does not appear to be a priority on this site, and the individual may adopt a poor attitude towards housekeeping. There is a very close synergy between culture and behavior. Our leaders establish the vision, values, and strategic direction of our company. Well-structured processes, supported by leadership, are a critical element, helping to shape the behaviors that ultimately influence our culture and results in performance. The right response from our leadership can either support the culture and enhance its development, or it can cause the culture to stagnate or even regress. For example, some leader responses can be positive, such as a "thank you for all your efforts," or "you have helped us make good progress towards our vision," or "you have done well, keep it up." On the other hand, negative responses such as "you are just not taking this seriously enough. If our performance does not improve, you will face the consequences." Each one of us must take responsibility to ensure that all BBS initiatives are effectively implemented. This does not mean that we have simply conducted an awareness session and have a signed attendance sheet. We need to commit ourselves to active engagement for as long as it takes to influence the desired behavior change. Actively support and participate in ad hoc BBS initiative. Promote, facilitate, and use all BBS tools and guides. Act as a role model by always setting the 100% HSE example. Being a coach to your colleagues on matters related to BBS. Now that we have looked at culture, behavior, and the relationship between the two, we are now going to look a little closer at the mind and what drives behavior. Here are some interesting facts about the human brain. It weighs about 1.3 kilograms. Runs on average of 12 watts. The total bandwidth of the internet. Research has indicated that the human brain has the potential to store 10 times more memory than previously thought, about 1 petabyte, or as much as the entire internet. Made of 70% water. It takes only 2% dehydration to affect your attention, memory, and other cognitive skills. Strengths of the conscious mind are as follows. Very analytical. Can deal with complex matters. Good for self-control. Assists in teaching unconscious. The limitations of the conscious mind includes as slow 40 bits per second. Only available when you are awake. Easily exhausted and eager to hand over to. Unconscious mind. Used to justify unconscious behavior. Goes in standby mode when doing repetitive tasks. Cannot easily multitask. Easily flooded, attention blindness. Responsible for few behaviors 5%. This is why it is important to ask yourself, do we learn from our mistakes? Why? Many of our efforts and existing controls focus so much on the conscious mind procedures, checklists, etc. When we have an incident, we tend to always go back to the conscious mind. So what do we need to do if we want to move to a generative culture? To become generative, we need to go beyond our current focus on the conscious mind. The strengths of the unconscious mind are as follows. Always on duty. Good at multitasking. Good for repetitive tasks. Very fast 11 megabits per second. Comes pre-programmed. Program can be upgraded or downgraded. Can be influenced, however, not only by conventional methods. The limitations of the unconscious mind include complex to understand. Misperception of info received. Because of speed can make errors. Biases can lead to less desired behavior. Existing heuristics may be inappropriate for changing conditions. Essentially, we tend to retain the reliability of the conscious mind and utilize the speed and effortless decision-making of the unconscious mind. So what are the roles of the unconscious mind that we need to learn to harness? The ability for fast decision-making. Doing most of the mental work. Generating 95% behaviors. Conserving mental and cognitive energy. Converting often done tasks to automatic behavior. Always available and active. 95% plus of our behavior comes from the unconscious mind. IT is very powerful. So how do we engage these two minds to ensure that we can leverage the strengths whilst countering the limitations? Here is an example. From the way that Etihad trains its commercial pilots. The conscious mind is engaged with detail and analysis. Pilots have to learn about aerodynamics, principles of flight, navigation, etc., whereas the unconscious mind is engaged through practicing the same safe procedures over and over and over until the pathways are embedded in the unconscious mind. It is truly a case of practice makes perfect. It is very important, however, that we are practicing only the good or safe behaviors, otherwise the unconscious mind will learn the bad habits as well. In this section we have seen that we cannot rely only on the conscious mind. The conscious mind cannot focus on multiple activities at the same time. The unconscious mind is very powerful but is prone to errors. The unconscious mind is responsible for 95% of all our decisions. We need to practice to engage both minds to form safer habits. Heuristics, mental shortcuts habits. Harnessing the power of the unconscious mind.
What is a heuristic and why do we need them? In order to achieve fast decision making, the unconscious mind relies on mental shortcuts. The shortcuts in our unconscious minds that we have practiced to perfection are called heuristics. A heuristic is nothing more than a habit, it is something that we do that is unconsciously driven. But why do we need them? Simply because the conscious mind is too slow, takes too much mental energy and cannot focus on multiple things at once. Heuristics give us the opportunity for very fast and effortless decision making. But we need to be aware of the errors of perception and biases that we all have. One of the potential problems with heuristics is that we don't only have good and safe ones. As we have seen, we also have bad habits. There are also some that we may be unaware of. The decision-making process. The conscious and unconscious minds follow the same process of perception, evaluation, and motivation. However, they evaluate inputs or stimuli differently and therefore motivate different responses. We are going to use an example from driving again to explore in more detail. What happens when we are driving and we see a green traffic signal? Perceptual system sees the green light and recognizes right of way. Evaluative system determines if it is safe to proceed. Unconscious mind accepts light is green, using the heuristic of green refers to good which signals go, therefore it is safe to proceed. This is typically what happens when we are in a state of automaticity. Conscious mind first checks for possible red light challenges from cross traffic. More experienced drivers will have developed a mental shortcut to check for cross-flow traffic. This would be an example of good/enhanced automaticity. Motivational system will determine behavior based on which mind is engaged. If unconscious mind is engaged, driver will proceed immediately without slowing down. If conscious mind is engaged or driver is more experienced, driver will slow, look left, then right and only proceed if it is safe to do so. How important is a heuristic? I think we will all have the same response if we saw the snake. What would you do? Would you first think about it? I think we would all run. That is the fright, freeze, flight, or fight response that we are all born with. We can also learn new heuristics or change existing ones. When did we first start forming the mental pathways for dealing with a traffic signal? Long before we started to drive ourselves. We learned by watching our parents or drivers. But we did not necessarily understand the reason behind their behavior. Our unconscious mind was evaluating this information and forming heuristics based on what was being observed. This would have the potential to influence our behavior. So it is very important that we as leaders are very aware of what we do and how we do it. Others may follow our example without understanding why. Natural heuristics habits. Prime. Thorn in foot, feel the pain. Existing. Heuristic. Pain is unpleasant, potentially dangerous, and needs to be avoided. Warmth is good, comforting and life-giving. Behavior. Jerking foot away, grimace in pain. Smile, more positive behavior. Prime. Hearing the seatbelt warning sign. Seeing the warning light. Sensing position in front of steering wheel. Combination of above. Heuristics can be developed of nurtured, learned through conscious or unconscious thought, practice/repetition, or following someone else's example, mimicking. Unconscious contemplation. Your unconscious mind observes, perceives, evaluates, and motivates. It is learning unconsciously even while you are not consciously aware that you are learning. Over time and with conscious contemplation, the combination of these primes: 1. Hearing the seatbelt alarm. 2. Seeing the seatbelt warning light. 3. Sensing your position in front of the steering wheel nurtured a heuristic to motivate the behavior to put on your seatbelt. Another example is over time and observing, primed by seeing and mimicking his father's behavior of walking with his hands in his back pocket. The child adopts the same behavior when walking. Automatism, the wrong kind, or the right kind, refers to a set of brief unconscious behaviors. A time during which the subject is unaware of his or her actions. For example, arriving at a point whilst driving, and wondering what happened over the last few kilometers. What is priming? An exposure to one stimulus influences a response to another related stimulus, without conscious guidance or intention. These stimuli are often conceptually related words or images. The 5 senses are not equal in terms of priming. A picture creates more impact than only hearing the description. Sight and touch gives better memory retention and builds stronger heuristics. Priming is like an on/off switch utilizing the senses. How do we prime for safer behavior? Exercise. How can we prime for safer behaviors on our workplace? Conducting safety campaigns to encourage conscious reflection. Promote use of signs, posters, awareness materials to build on good habits. Examples set by leaders to strengthen positive bias. Demonstrate. Provide positive recognition to build on good habits and activate others. Teach, reinforce new skills and behaviors until they become habit. How do we go about creating new heuristics or changing existing ones? TLS, MGRS, coaches. There are 8 factors or conditions that we should consider before trying to influence someone's behavior. Trust, lead by example. Right climate, immediate or on-the-spot engagement may not be appropriate. Structure, select appropriate approach. Culture, understand the influence of culture on the worker's behavior. Engagement, adopt a positive approach. Purpose, there needs to be a perceived value for the worker. Ability, consider the level of the individual. Relationship, it is more than just one interaction. Change, unlearn through practice using the 8 essential conditions for learning. Leveraging, using existing heuristics which generate feelings/emotions. The affect heuristic is a type of mental shortcut in which people make decisions that are heavily influenced by their current emotions. Essentially, your affect, a psychological term for emotional response, plays a critical role in the choices and decisions you make. Key learnings from this section. Heuristics are mental shortcuts that help to make fast, effortless decisions. Heuristics are important to our daily lives, they can be life-saving. We all have good and less desirable heuristics, safe and unsafe. There are 8 factors to consider before attempting to influence heuristics in others. We use the human senses to activate desired heuristics. There are many factors that influence the unconscious mind and how we make decisions. The BBS coaches have been introduced to a number of the more common biases, trained how to identify them and provided with tools to help them influence and counter these biases. Factors influencing unconscious mind. The unconscious mind's speed and ability to access mental shortcuts with very little effort makes it ideal for making routine decisions and performing routine tasks. Existing mental shortcuts can be enhanced, or new shortcuts can be created to replace less desirable ones. Challenges that we face, however. Due to its speed and tendency for errors of perception, we can find ourselves jumping to conclusions before considering all the facts. We all have biases that influence the way that our unconscious mind evaluates information or inputs. Whilst well-trained automatism can be extremely useful, we must be aware of the dangers of bad habits that can lead to severe consequences. The presence of inappropriate emotions can affect our decision-making. Biases influencing the unconscious mind. Bias. The human tendency to make decisions based upon certain thinking, thoughts, or preconceived notions. As most of our behavior is generated by the unconscious mind, we need to understand. Biases relate to the human tendency to make certain decisions based on certain preconceived notions influencing our unconscious mind. How to counter or minimize any potential negative impact. How to maximize the potential positive impact. There have been more than 300 biases identified that influence unconscious decision making. We are going to look at 5 of the most common ones that we should all be aware of. Halo effect. Overconfidence, complacency. Risk homeostasis. Bystander effect. Obedience to authority. Conformity. Groupthink. Law of least effort. Cognitive dissonance. Reciprocity. Overconfidence or complacency. This is one of the most common human factor root causes identified during incident investigations. It exists when we think that we know more than we actually do or that we think we are more skilled than we are. It often occurs when someone has done a task many times without incident whilst not following the safe work procedure. The unofficial procedure now becomes the standard way of doing things. Overconfidence is a bias that we all have from time to time. Law of least effort. Human tendency to choose the option which requires the least effort to achieving a goal. If there happens to be many options available, even better or safer ones, unconsciously we will gravitate towards the easiest, in terms of effort, option. Kahneman says laziness is built deeply into our nature. Risk homeostasis, partial compliance. people decide which level of risk is acceptable to them and adjust their behavior accordingly. Added protection could lead to a sense of security resulting in increased risk behavior. Groupthink bias, peer pressure. Social proof. Groupthink. In group, out-group groupthink occurs when people agree with the majority decision because they do not want to feel out, even if they believe they are right. If everyone has been taking a risk and not following a written safe procedure, I may be inclined to do the same because I do not want to appear as though I am not part of the team. These biases affect us when we behave as part of a group, e.g., specific shift, a maintenance team or a group of safety professionals. The dramatic effect of a group on behavior can be observed in how sport fans behave when watching a sport game. We all regard behavior as being more acceptable, the more people behave in that specific way. Bystander effect bias. Everyone witnesses unsafe behavior. No one in the group speaks up. No one takes responsibility to be the one who steps outside of the group to address the elephant in the room. In March 2019, the Boeing 737 MAX passenger airliner was grounded worldwide after 346 people died in two crashes, Lion Air Flight 610 on October 29, 2018 and Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 on March 10, 2019. Boeing admitted it knew of a flaw months before the first accident, MCAS. The Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, MCAS, is a flight control, software mode, developed by Boeing. Satellite Navigation Ground-Based Augmentation System, GBAS. After the first crash, a FAA analysis showed a high likelihood of further crashes, up to 15 during the 30 to 40-year life of the 737 MAX. Many employees and agencies had concerns, yet no one took decisive action. This is another example of the bystander effect. Key learnings from this section. We all have biases, more than 300 human biases identified. Biases influence our behaviors without us realizing it. Biases can be influenced or countered. How do we influence behavior? ADNOC BBS engagement tools. Conscious self-reflection. You need to align your conscious and unconscious minds for any behavior change. Conscious self-reflection. You need to align your conscious and unconscious minds for any behavior change. In this picture, the sumo wrestler represents the unconscious mind and the child represent the conscious mind. Remember, 95% of everything we do is done unconsciously. At first one would think that the child could never win, but there are martial arts techniques that allows the child to use the bigger sumo's strength and weight against him. Although smaller, the conscious mind is stronger and can influence the unconscious mind. You need to keep in mind that you too have both a conscious and unconscious mind. Most of your own behavior originates from your unconscious mind. You also make perceptual errors. You also act in automatic. You also suffer from many biases. You also are affected by emotions. You also need others to engage with you to ensure the safest possible behavior. Imagine you want colleagues to adopt certain behaviors. Examples: arrive for meetings on time, do not get distracted by your mobile phone, answer emails. You issue a procedure and talk to them or train them. Furthermore, imagine they nod their heads and agree, consciously. Is the job done? Will the behavior automatically change? Conscious intervention by others assists with the conscious self-reflection that is required to develop safer habits. The BBS tools provide a mechanism for this either in a group environment or on a one-to-one basis. Let's continue working together to make a positive impact and drive excellence across our organization. Following this awareness session, please take a moment to complete the training evaluation questionnaire. Kindly submit your responses to HSE Department for our records. Thank you.